we are going to go ahead. Again, as I said a moment ago, my name is William Spear. Sophie Werner's on the presentation as well, and we are members of the Business Action Center. We have a pretty well-stocked program for you today. It includes some prepping for prepping for exporting. We're going to do a food manufacturing case study, talk about the Business Action Center, etc. But before we get started on that, I want to give you a spoiler right up front. And that spoiler is this: the New Jersey Business Action Center provides solutions. And you're going to see that again on slide 7. And our job between now and slide 7 is to bring us to that and then launch the rest of the program from there. So we're going to go on to 2. And Sophie, this is where I want to get out of the way for a moment or two, let you take over.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome, or good afternoon now, and welcome to our webinar. We're very excited to be here to support the companies in Ocean County. Would like to specifically thank some of our partners that have been very instrumental in making this webinar a success. Specifically, would like to thank Barbara Fritz, the Executive Director of the Point Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, Danielle Kidney, the Executive Director of the Brick Township Chamber of Commerce, and Mackenzie Malpass, Administrative Assistant at the Brick Township Chamber of Commerce, as well as Lori Pepinella, the President and a Trustee for the Southern Ocean Chamber Association. So thank you all, and I cannot not mention our partner that is with us on all of the webinars of this South Jersey Export Webinar Series, the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey. So special thanks to Christina Renna, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Southern New Jersey. So we are going to kick things off with a poll. So there will be a poll launching that you should see pop up on your screen with 3 questions. The first question is asking you to let us know what kind of business you are in. The second question is asking whether you've ever sold your product or service to a buyer outside of the United States. And the third question is asking if you are actively marketing your company internationally. So take a moment or two. I see some responses have already come in. So we'll leave it open for another moment. See if we will, looks like we've got about over half of the responses. And this is anonymous. So I am seeing that some folks are service-based and other. So if you would like to put in the Q&A, or if you are able to direct chat us, the presenters, with your what specific kind of business you're in, that'll give us more insight so we can touch on that throughout the presentation. All right. Okay, so it looks like we've got a lot of new to export, and some are actively marketing the company internationally. So very nice. Thank you all. And I'm going to pass it back to William Spear to continue.
Sophie, thank you so much. And before we go on to the next slide, I want to just take about a minute to talk about the economy of the state of New Jersey. New Jersey has 21 counties, and it is the 5th smallest state in the United States of America. However, it is the 10th largest GDP amongst the states. We are also the 14th largest exporting state, and New Jersey companies currently export to every country ranging from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, and they export products ranging from precious metals and industrial machinery to silk. So let that be the backdrop of the state of New Jersey and what its current exporting state is. And now going forward one slide, within what I've just described, the mission of the Business Action Center, as indicated on the screen, is to provide technical assistance, resources, and supports to those companies, to those industries throughout all 21 counties, whether they are exporting precious metals or silk, or whether they're exporting to Afghanistan or Zimbabwe. The Business Action Center strives to be within or providing resources to that universe And then we see that universe becoming even more dynamic. Our vision is, yes, it's very fine what it is right now, but our goal is also to expand that and to bring more companies in, bring more companies into the economy, help them navigate the state. And then also, with regards to the area that Sophie and I work, encourage them to begin exporting. And so that dynamic nature of the state is where we see ourselves. We see ourselves right in the midst of it, all 21 counties, all industries, all products, et cetera. That's where we see ourselves providing value back to the state and its companies. Now, in this particular graphic, you're going to see three things on the sides of the state, the New Jersey Business Action Center: collaborate, communicate, and connect. And that is that's our daily mantra. Communicate today. Everybody's here with us on this webinar, so we're definitely communicating that. But also, we collaborate with other entities within the state, with our federal partners. I'm not sure, but I think we might have one or two of them here on the webinar today, and connect both companies and our partners to other entities, to other organizations to grow the state as a whole. And then again, in our particular case, to grow the state's economy. And this is who we are. This is a relatively recent picture. I think there is 35 in this picture. I'm not sure. I haven't counted recently. But this is who we are. You see in the midst, you'll see Lieutenant Governor slash Secretary Way standing next to our Executive Director, Melanie Willoughby. And then everybody else is the different units on that within the back. And we're going to get to that in one moment. And these are the units. Business advocacy, this is the unit within the back that helps New Jersey companies to really to grow and explore opportunities for their domestic operations. And, it could be working with BPU for energy grants, connecting with financiers, other organizations for other purposes, Department of Labor for staff, et cetera. But the Business Advocacy Office really is the front piece for that. Here in the Office of Export Promotion, we help New Jersey companies to sell their goods and services around the world. We're going to get into that in a bit, so I'll save more of that. The Office of Small Business Advocacy, if you can imagine information being a transaction, how do I fill in the blank? Where can I go to get information on fill in the blank? The Small Business Advocacy Unit, through the chat, through its 1-800-Jersey 7 call-in number, is staffed by people. If I could lift my camera and point about 30 feet over my left shoulder, you would see 6 folks over there who are staffing those phones, staffing the chat. And their role is to direct companies to get answers to their questions, or in many instances, they will have the knowledge themselves and they will provide that information straight away. The Office of State Planning is in charge of the state's plan, and it has been kind of front and center. It's probably been the most prominent part of the Business Action Center over the last maybe 6 or 9 months. There's been a lot of local adaptations of that, presentations to the legislation, et cetera. So they've gotten a lot of publicity, and a lot of publicity for the positive work that they're doing. The Cannabis Training Academy, pretty straightforward. The industry is somewhat new, and through the Training Academy, we are providing resources and training to help entrepreneurs not only start companies, but start companies that are compliant with the rules and the laws and the regulations that go along with cannabis. And these are all the roles within the back. And this is a spoiler that I was talking about a moment ago. The back provides solutions. Um, Everything that I've said to this point is what we do, and in instances, it's how we do it, from our own knowledge, providing resources, providing technical knowledge, et cetera. We help companies to address instances which have come up. As I've stated, where do I find this? How do I do this? What's the resource for bringing on additional staff? The New Jersey Department of Labor is, a top-notch resource for that. But we provide that solution through all those 5 units that you just saw, as well as our management, Melanie Willoughby and Penny Wild. That's what the BAC is all about. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back one. Connecting with the BAC. Some points to be made, and it's interesting because we've done this 3 times now, and this slide has been on our presentations for a while. But yesterday, I was talking with 2 companies, and towards the end of the call, both of them asked how much the service that we're providing would be costing them. And the point to this is uh, the services that we provide, that Sophie provides, that I provide, that business advocacy provides, those are covered by the tax dollars here in the state of New Jersey. So there is no additional fee to get that. And so, please avail yourselves of those services. In addition to that, the conversations we have with individual companies are just that. Those conversations that we have with them, those are confidential, and they are really nobody else's business but the individual companies. And quickly, accurately, and carefully, that's another one of our hallmarks. We turn around information quickly. There's a high degree of accuracy and a high degree of intention with that. You heard me a moment ago say the 1-800 Jersey 7 number. If any of you know Don Newman, that's Don's unit over there. I think he would be quite upset with me if I did not remind that, and I'll probably say that a couple of times. But if you forget everything else that you hear in today's webinar, and I do hope you don't, but if you do, call 1-800 Jersey 7, ask for William, ask for Sophie, and we'll be sure to get back in touch with you. There is a chat, businessnj.gov, and then there's a lot of resources on that third line, state.nj.us/state/back. And let's take this forward one. Now, the Office of Export Promotion, this is where Sophie and I are staffed. We have 3 primary roles here, and this is to help small and mid-sized companies to access global markets and concurrently, hopefully, to grow local jobs. There are instances in which larger companies engage with us, and certainly we're not going to turn them away. However, the larger companies tend to have a staff of Sophies and Bills, and they don't frequently need our additional inputs or service. Always ready on standby, but usually that's not the case. Export advocacy. Sophie's going to be talking about planning, and planning is a tremendously important part of entering and even expanding your efforts in international markets. And no matter what degree of planning any company engages, sooner or later, something's not going to go quite right. In fact, Sophie and I both have a couple companies that we're working with in which things are not going right. The state of New Jersey's Office of Export Promotion helps in those situations. In many times, being another government official, we can do outreach and we can connect with other government officials to provide input, to get clarity, to see what we can do to move things along. And that is it's more often than not reactive, but that is another part of our services. And then this bottom point here, the foreign trade zone, the state of New Jersey and the Office of Export Promotion manages foreign trade zone number 4 up around Mount Olive. It's a really technical aspect in which goods can come into the country free of duty, free of charge, be acted upon in there. And then when they go out, the purpose of the zone is to have them go out at a lower duty rate. And if there are individuals who have interest with that, we can certainly schedule some time for that. It runs a little technical quickly, and it is not for everybody due to volume and the complexity of complying, but it is something that is there, and we'd welcome a chance to talk with you further about that. On to the next slide, introduction to exporting. This is really where I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to bring Sophie back into this. And Sophie, you're going to start right there, obviously, and I'm turning the screen over to you. So just let me know when you want me to go forward.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. And welcome everyone again. We're really excited that you are here today. And if you did not have a reason to be here, we're going to give you a couple, more than a couple, right here, getting started with the business case for exporting. So, as you know, you all know, as business owners or business support services, you are looking to help businesses grow. So that is the underlying piece, that exporting is for companies that are looking to grow. And so if you are here live or watching this recording and you are a business looking to increase your sales, you're in the right place. Um, Tapping into international markets. If you are not tapping into international markets or buyers outside of the United States, you are missing out on marketing and benefiting from more than 95% of the world's consumers that are outside of the US and its territories. In addition, and perhaps more importantly, than that fact of the world's consumers, is the fact that over two-thirds of the world's buying power is outside of the United States. So it's not just quantity, but also quality. There are quite a lot of consumers outside of the United States and quite a lot of buying power. Um, Leaning into exporting and looking at diversifying your markets away from solely depending on US domestic markets will help smooth over your business cycle, and can help with market fluctuations and make sure that you are diversifying and are getting those benefits also from additional intel from your customers abroad, and getting that global perspective. And whether or not you are looking to sell your business, the another benefit of exporting is that you can increase the valuation of your business. This is something that is going to just make the company more valuable, but also, again, more globally minded, which sometimes you can and sometimes you can't put a price tag on. And then, of course, utilizing the full capacity of all of the production, sales, and admin, the teams, equipment, processes that you have already invested in, making sure that they are running at full speed. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly go over today's agenda. We're going to kick things off with the export readiness self-assessment. We'll walk through those questions, and we'll also be sending out that self-assessment in a follow-up email to all of the attendees. And you will have the opportunity to schedule a call to go over that self-assessment, in which we can provide you even more tailored resources. We will talk about the management commitment to exporting as a prerequisite first step before moving any further. We'll talk about trade barriers and opportunities, of course, export plan development, international market research. We will have a food marketing case study. I'll let you guess what kind of product our fictitious business entity, created for the purposes of this presentation, not bogged down, is selling and growing. And then we'll wrap things up with questions and answers, and then talk about next steps. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so the export readiness self-assessment, you heard me talk at the beginning of the business case for exporting about how exporting is for companies that are looking to grow. So with that being the case, you need to first have a company that has successfully sold in the domestic market in order to have a good foundation to build upon when looking to sell into international markets. So have you had the opportunity to really get your cogs where they need to be? Have you got the opportunity to work out all of the kinks in your production process or your service, your provision of services? So making sure that the company is ready to grow, and it's recommended that a company is at least 1 year in business prior to looking to expand. And in many ways, it is like starting a new business all over again, which is why you will need you can't just use your regular business plan for this. You will need an export plan, which we will, of course, discuss later. The second point, which we will talk about both the management commitment and the types of things that you would need to dedicate your time and resources to later in this presentation. But a lot of it starts with the dedication of time and the dedication to learning, because exporting is not a quick fix for a company. This is a long-term strategy that can be used by companies that are looking to grow and have the ability to invest time and manpower into not just attracting those buyers in international markets, but retaining them and keeping those positive consumer relationships. Number three, you obviously need to have the production capacity to keep up with the increased demand that you are looking to drum up. If you already have financing that helps you scale up, that's a wonderful thing. Next slide. Not only will you need financing for your production or for additional personnel, but also the financing for the additional investment in the marketing to your international markets. And this is one of the times when I will encourage everyone on this call and everyone listening into the recording to try to narrow your focus. We use the phrase global, international. That does not mean you need to look at all of the continents, all of the regions that you believe would perhaps be a good fit. Try to narrow it down to three or even two. You could even start with one, but really try to narrow your focus and even try to picture that market while we go through this presentation and try to focus on that with the follow-up, and you'll get a lot more out of it than trying to paint with a broad brush. One great thing I do want to highlight when we're talking about financial resources needed for the expansion of not just your production capacity, but that ability to your sales and customer retention. There are SBA, the U.S. Small Business Administration, does offer financing products specifically to support U.S. exporters, and that can be in the form of a line of credit, a term loan. So there's a lot of different solutions out there to specific exporter challenges. So you are not alone in this. Regarding U.S. and foreign intellectual property protection, any U.S. patent or trademark that you hold currently is not going to afford you any protection in a foreign market. So make sure that you are aware of which specific rights that each that you are looking to apply for in your foreign markets, and you would have to pay a fee for each overseas IP right that you apply for. The lifespan may vary, but also since you're increasing your exposure in overseas markets, really, this is also a good time to make sure that you have your U.S. IP protection down pat. And then the last point on this slide regarding the ability to modify specific parts of your product or perhaps the service that you are providing to meet foreign import regulations, as well as cultural preferences. And at the end of the day, to survive competition, both local within that market that you're exporting to, and other exporters from other markets that are looking to also enter that market as a non-domestic company. So there are a lot of ways that you can adapt your current products and services to fit the cultural preferences, of course, meeting the regulations. But what we want you all to walk away with is you cannot take your U.S. product or service that is optimized for the local market and just drop it into your preferred international market of choice. You are going to need to look at of course, the ingredients, the regulations, but also the target customer within that market, so that you are able to provide that benefit to them, and that you are tailoring your product or service to that buyer in that new market. Next slide, please. The next piece about knowledge and shipping your products overseas. You want to make sure that your product is able to arrive and able to be received by your buyer. And then the next point, you want to make sure that you are able to get paid. These three points on this slide might seem like, okay, well, I could delegate this out. I could find a logistics broker. I could find a compliance officer. These are all resources that businesses may look for and can benefit from. But at the end of the day, you as the exporter of record are responsible for ensuring compliance and ensuring that you have enough knowledge to make the right decision and find the best service provider. So do not skip on these pieces or delegate them out. You need to put in the time and understand what the process is for your specific good or service so that you are able to be in compliance and you're able to have that working knowledge, not a PhD level, but have enough knowledge in order to understand the um, any challenges that may come up. And as Bill mentioned, our office also provides advocacy. So if your goods are stuck in customs, this is something that does come up. We can provide support in the event of the unimaginable, unthinkable, unexpected, which comes up as we know in business. And last point I'll make on this slide is, of course, lack of knowledge of the export laws, regulations, etc., is not an excuse for non-compliance. So you want to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the firsthand knowledge, but of course, folks and advisors that are able to support you to make sure that you are in compliance. Next slide, please. So I know I threw a lot at you all, and one of the main points that I think floats to the top from the last several slides and the assessment is really drilling down and asking you, are you ready to embark on this new path, this new pathway to exporting? Are you willing to invest the time? And the time in learning comes before investing the capital so that you can have a fruitful outcome um, from your investment into this new part of your business. So, one of the pieces that is required, of course, that we talked about was the commitment of management because it needs to start from the top. And to talk more about this, I will pass this along to my manager, William Spear.
Sophie, thank you so much. And the management commitment is, it kind of permeates everything throughout the exporting endeavor. You know, it will take its own life. It will, in terms of speed and process and the quickness of which it proceeds, and it really does need to be nurtured by the management of the company. Um, you know, Going into one country could be faster or slower than going into another, and that kind of uneven level of progress has to be embraced and be prepared for from the very top reaches of the company on down. And to to take one gentle step back to export, and this is a point or riffing on a point that Sophie made early on. Um, this should be a core component of your revenue strategy. It's not an add-on. It's not like wearing a nice hat to go out. And I happen to have a very nice hat from here, but that does not all would not make anybody an exporter. You want to have the sales to your foreign buyers to be as inherent in the company's DNA as selling to buyers in Nebraska or Arkansas or whatever the case may be. So it really does need to be looked at in terms of the same critical aspect to the company. And then across that leadership team, that management team, everybody needs to be aware that, this is going to run at its own pace and that, your HR folks or your marketing folks or your product development folks or your shipping folks or your customer service folks um, are all going to hear the same message. And the message is this is a critical part of the company's sales strategy and growth strategy, and everybody will play a role into that. It's not going to be just typically the sales department says, well, I think we could increase sales. That's fine, well and good, and we certainly would not get in the way of that. But that will also necessitate additional probably language skills inside of the company. So we've talked about, making a product accessible in a local market. So you may see translation of the literature that goes along with the product. So it is really a broad-based initiative, and everybody will have a function in that. And tying that all together will be your leadership team. And then outside of the company is going to be the key folks that are identified here. Your banker, that's probably going to be one of the first folks that you talk with, because if you're looking for working capital or a loan, not every bank has an appetite for working with international sales. And so take the time to begin exploring that now rather than, oh, look at this, I've got a contract to fulfill within the next 45 days. And then find yourself in a bit of a scramble to get the financing that might be needed for that. So all those things go into that. Now, I want to add on, and Sophie used this point a couple times, or she used this word a couple of times, invest. Right now, everything up to this point, everything has got a zero cost attached to it. You'll spend time without a doubt, and everybody's time has a value to it. But interviewing different bankers, there's no cost associated with that. Meeting with your leadership team and making sure everybody's on board with this, there's no cost with that. Sophie's going to introduce some tools in a couple of minutes. There's no cost to that. Everything is there to really prepare to take this part of the company into other markets. Let me just go forward one slide. Trade barriers and trade opportunities. The trade barriers right now, I don't think they could be any more in the news if they tried. And the single word that comes to mind is the word tariff. Tariffs have been around for a long time. Big time, big tariff amounts, small tariff amounts. And these absolutely have to be part of the planning process. If you sit down and you say, I'm trying to sell into, anybody can pick a country. You'll need to do as part of your pricing and probably part of your contract work, what are the tariffs associated with moving goods and or services into that country? Should be able to find that on that country's commerce page or maybe international affairs or something like that. So you'll be able to get a current tariff rate based upon goods coming in from the US into that country. And I am certain that about 99.9% of all the tariffs are based on a Schedule B code. And Sophie's going to spend some time with that in a moment or two. So one of the things, hopefully another takeaway, begin to understand the language of trade, tariffs, your Schedule B code, and the cousin of tariffs is this thing called non-tariff trade barriers. And what those are not so much a duty or a fee to be paid just to get into the country. It can be, really, really harsh regulation or rules that are applied to non-domestic companies. All these things are intended to discourage outside companies or outside products coming in. And there's an amount that's available, but when that becomes oppressive, that becomes something that we look into, when the companies engage us. And a non-tariff trade barrier is not something to A, ignore or be, I guess, intimidated by. So know that those are out there as well. And on the flip side of all those negatives are trade opportunities. Typically, what those are free trade agreements. Those countries that enter into a relationship in which they might lower or completely remove tariffs, those do exist. And that might be something to make an executive say, well, maybe I'll look at those countries since there's already a free trade agreement in place. And all that can be found on the U.S. Trade Representative, ustr.gov. This is more on the non-tariff barriers. We talked about it briefly. Pretty straightforward, and I'm sure if we were to travel around the country or around the world in the next 2 minutes, we'd probably be able to double that list. But these are some things to, be sensitive to. And on the same side with the tariff barriers, all of these are going to inhibit or discourage the flow of goods from your firm into another country. And as I said, the U.S. trade representative, these are some of those multinational agreements that are in place. If you spend any time reading the financial pages or most most appropriately the international trade pages, you're going to hear these get kicked around, talked about a lot. They are changing almost daily, certainly sometimes almost weekly. Nonetheless, these are things that will be significant to helping you plan out and plot your future export sales. Let's just go forward one more. And I think, Sophie, this is where we're going to bring you back in. And from here, Sophie's going to start the building of an export plan as well as some introductions to some tools. So, Sophie, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Bill. Next slide, please. All right, so for your export plan, so you're going to want to consider the following items. Many of these will look familiar, as I hope you've all gone through the process of writing a business plan when you started your business, whether that was last week or 5 years ago. But hopefully you realize that your business plan is a living, breathing document, and that should be the same with your export plan. So this is going to be a document that you're going to receive the most benefit actually through the process of creating it and through the process of research. But also know that you are not going to put this up on a shelf and it's not going to collect dust. This is going to be something that you update and need to utilize and maintain. It's only as valuable as you let it be. So you want to make sure to put this together and make sure that it is a actionable document for you. So, I'm going to highlight a couple pieces on this slide. We talked about product or service. I think it's worth noting more than once that services are exportable. We will be talking about resources for international market research for service-based companies here in um, in Ocean County, and also financial capacity. We talked about that before, but you really need to have the ability and you want to have access to this financing before you need it. So looking at this sooner rather than later, as Bill said, talking with your banker, making sure that they're aware that you're looking to start this aspect of your business and looking to go in this direction, but also that they have the appetite for international trade, and that they are able to support um, your export sales. So one of the other pieces that we talked about were management commitment, but as much as the management needs to be committed, they also need to be aligned. So who is going to be in charge of what? Looking at strengths and defining clear roles, as this is a new venture from your current business, making sure that you are able to um, be really clear about who is responsible for what. For production capacity, as we mentioned, having a growth plan, and looking at pricing considerations. We'll talk a little bit more later about landed cost, which would be your total cost once the product has arrived to the buyer. So that versus um, the cost. If you were selling to a neighboring state rather than a neighboring country. Next slide, please. For the export planning process, as mentioned, this is going to be similar to that of creating a startup business plan. You're going to have to invest time in research, but you're going to reap the benefits because you will have a blueprint, you'll have a map to your destination, so you know where you'll be going. And this also comes into play when we're talking about the advocacy. issues that some companies are run into, um, ways to avoid ways to avoid certain challenges, or making sure that you have a clear process by which you vet prospective partners or buyers is going to come in handy, so that you make sure that you are not in a situation where you are, you know, in need of assistance, and need to you know try to figure out a plan B. Having the plan A on paper is going to help you from the get go. So one of the processes that you'll also do is testing your own assumptions. Maybe you think that, okay, Canada might be the best market for me. Well, diving into the Canadian market and looking at the data and seeing, okay, is my commodity actually being purchased there? Are they purchasing U.S. goods in this specific type? And we'll talk about how to access that data and how to track the movement of goods shortly. But going in and looking to test your assumptions, and preparing yourself to be surprised. Next slide, please. Here's a sample export plan outline, and one of the great resources I will highlight right now is trade.gov. If you do not have trade.gov bookmarked, I highly recommend it. They have a plethora of resources for U.S. exporters, and are absolutely you know, one of the best resources through the U.S. Department of Commerce. But it's going to start with your commitment statement, um, as we've discussed a couple of times, and making sure that it's clear who is doing what. For the situation or background analysis, we did not discuss export licenses, but this is something that you will need to be aware of. Most products do not require an export license, but of course, there are exceptions. And especially if your product has any kind of dual use, meaning a both civilian or customer non military use and military use, that would be likely something subject to a license. So absolutely look into this, and make sure that you are conducting your due diligence. For product classifications, we're going to look at the Schedule B number, which is what the U.S. Census uses to track U.S. exports, and we'll also look at a HS Harmonized System Code, which is the global commodity code that is used for specific products in international commerce. For your marketing components, we talked about a little bit about making sure that you are um, tailoring your product to the specific market. And I mentioned that you can't take your product that's adapted for the US market and just drop it into pick a country and expect it to do well. You need to be aware that, of course, there's different colors, symbols, design elements that hold different meaning in different regions, and making sure that you are not moving forward with a product launch or even a marketing campaign without being aware of the impact of that messaging on your intended target market. Pricing with considerations of duties, taxes, freight costs, and logistics included. We could summarize this to your landed cost. So when you look at your landed cost, that would be the cost of you shipping that product with duties, taxes, freight costs, logistics, taxes, anything else. But how much would you need to charge for it to still be a profitable, viable sale? So looking at that when making, quoting prospective buyers, and making sure that you have, priced appropriately, so that you are not losing money. So you don't want to price, you don't want to also undercut yourself and, promote a very low priced item, and that's the same domestic, um, because you don't want your customers to only be your customers because they're looking for the lowest cost. You want to compete on the value, and compete on the unique specialty of your product and the solution that you are solving. And then action steps, looking at quarterly accomplishments, giving yourself some kind of goalposts is going to help you to make sure that you are on track. Next slide, please. And then, of course, a plan would not be complete without a budget. So similarly to your business plan, you have both the narrative section and the financial section. The narrative section is the beautiful story of your business, describing your products, describing your team, what makes you different. And similarly, you need to include this financial section to back it up with the data, to back it up with numbers and projections grounded in reality, that you will be having a positive return on investment, looking at your break even analysis, looking at all the specific investments, how much is the translation of marketing materials going to cost you? What about travel? Bill mentioned trade shows earlier, looking at ways to get in front of foreign buyers, brokers, and distributors and actually make those face-to-face connections is still valuable today. Implementation schedule, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. So making sure to give yourself those deadlines. And then it's always great to also include additional information on your target markets. And a great way to start looking into that is the country commercial guides, which we will look at shortly. But I'm going to Bill, next slide, please. But I'm going to bring us into the next section of the presentation, which is international market research tools, which is a great first starting point for companies that are looking to investigate potential markets and try to see which ones might be a good fit for them and their product or service. Next slide, please. These are 4 additional links that I highly recommend that you bookmark, but no need to type them out. We'll be walking through some screen captures in a moment, and these slides will be sent out following this presentation, so they will be available. So the first resource, or the first 2 rather, are on the U.S. Census website. The first one we will go to identify the commodity code specific to a product, and it is specifically for use in foreign trade data. This is different than some other codes you might be familiar with for your company, such as a NAICS code. So your NAICS code is your North American Industry Classification System code, which is based on your economic activity or your business industry, whereas the U.S. Census Schedule B commodity code is based on the actual item. So whether it is a fresh fruit or a preserved fruit or a manufactured food product, those are all going to be very different commodity codes. Then we'll look at the Census Bureau Global Market Finder. And then the third resource is specifically for our service-based businesses, which I know we have some here today. The BEA, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, their interactive data application is going to be a great resource for you to get started in your research. And then finally, everyone will benefit from the country commercial guides from the Department of Commerce, as mentioned, trade.gov, very valuable resource. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with the service export data resource, the BEA, or the Bureau of Economic Analysis. So this is the homepage. When you go to the interactive data application, I strongly recommend that you watch this intro video. They'll walk you through how to utilize the tables. But for the purposes of today, we're going to go through and select one of the tables that I personally like. Next slide, please. So you'll see on the lower left side of the screen, there are different options under international data. Next slide, please. Then you'll click on interactive data tables. Next slide, please. From there, you can select international services, which is what we'll select today. Next slide. And then finally, you will get to a list of different tables in U.S. trade and services, and you can select by type of service, by country, There's also options to select just by the type of service. I think the 2.2 is I think a great resource. Also, I think we were on yesterday, Bill, and we were looking at table 6, which also provides insight based on countries and services. So there's a lot of different resources that you can, a lot of different data you can access from here. Give yourself some time for this research process. Get yourself a cup of coffee and sit down and just see what you can find, because this is all information that is available for free, that is not going to cost you a penny and is just going to cost your time and a little bit of learning a new skill to navigate this new database. Next slide, please. All right, so finally, we're going to go into the food manufacturing case study, where we'll look at international market research tools for the fictitious company that Bill and I have just started. We recently acquired a cranberry bog, or a cranberry farm, hence the name, not bogged down. We're going to move forward. Bill would probably like me to mention he did not participate in the selection of the name, of the fictitious name.
There is some truth to that, yes.
Some truth. Okay. So we are going to start by finding the Schedule B number, or your commodity number. And this is what the U.S. Census uses to track export movement. So there's two options. You can either use the Schedule B search engine, which we will use today, or you can look through the most recent Schedule B publication, or the Schedule B book. Next slide, please. Just want to briefly show you the Schedule B publication. It is divided into chapters. The Schedule B search engine does the same thing, but just has a different method by which you will find, the chapter and the specific code for your commodity. Next slide, please. So we looked up cranberry preserves, and actually ended up looking up cranberry juice. So we looked up multiple cranberry products, because we're in the innovation stage at our cranberry farm. So you would type in some keywords. It can, if you're not able to get a result from the description you type in, try typing more basic keywords. And what's great about the search engine is it will ask you very pointed questions to make sure that it has the correct characteristics and different uses for the product. So next slide, please. So here you'll see some of the questions. So it'll list assumed characteristics, known characteristics. So it might ask you how it is preserved, or what is the process by which the item was manufactured. So it's really going to depend on on the type of product that you're looking for. But for our example, we are going to be looking at 2009810000, which is cranberry juice. So that we get to by looking at the Schedule B number and looking down and going through within Chapter 20, which is a different chapter than the raw agriculture product of cranberries. So we're looking at a manufactured food product here. But there also is data available for that agriculture product, whether it is fresh or chilled or frozen. All of that information is also available. Next slide, please. So the next step is plugging in that Schedule B number into the Global Market Finder, which is also powered by the U.S. Census, which is also one of the URLs I'm recommending that you bookmark. But you can see here that the top export recipient, or the top U.S. export market for cranberry juice, is actually the Netherlands. And something that Bill and I also discussed is that if you have when you see the country, when you see these reports, you want to maybe go a level deeper and say, okay, well, I wonder if the Netherlands is really consuming this this many, hundreds of thousands of liters of cranberry juice, or is it because they are the gateway to the EU? So how can you further look at what this data is telling you rather than just looking at the first level? So next slide, please. So one of the resources that is ideal for both service providers and product-based companies is the U.S. country commercial guides, and these are prepared by the in-country staff at the Department of Commerce, State Department, Department of Agriculture, or the Foreign Agriculture Service that are located within the U.S. embassies and consulates abroad. So this is the page, and you can select um, you know the country of interest, and we're going to select the Netherlands because that was the top hit for the U.S. exports of cranberry juice. Next slide, please. So this is what your basic country commercial guide looks like. It has different sections for doing business in the specific market, information on customs, regulations, and standards, and it'll highlight different industries that may be particularly beneficial for U.S. Companies to look at. Next slide, please. For the Netherlands, I'm just going to highlight this table that was on their agriculture page, where we're looking at their market share versus main suppliers market share. So they get really into the weeds in a good way, or into the weeds of a bog, if that's something that you're laughing at. I know Bill is not laughing at, uh, but looking at the strengths of the key supplier countries. So looking at those local suppliers, and I zoomed in on those two boxes, which you see to the right side of the screen, by being in the same region, in the same EU market, but potential ways to compete with local suppliers is on quality, and having a unique product. And this is specifically within the condiments and sauces. So perhaps this would be for our cranberry sauce product, Bill, that I know we wanted to launch prior to the holidays. Next slide, please. And we're almost at the hour, but we would love to hear any questions that you may have. And we'll also, as I mentioned, we will be sending out the PDF of this presentation with the links, as well as an opportunity to schedule a follow-up call with us to discuss your new to export self-assessment, which will be included in that follow-up email. And we ask that you also complete the survey that we'll send out as well to give us feedback on today's webinar. So please, if there's any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you, or you can put it in the Q&A.
Sophie, I'm not seeing anything in chat yet.
Likewise, yes.
I'd have thought somebody might have asked how to get an order of our cranberry sauce or
I
preserves.
too am shocked that
I
that
am a
has not
little,
come up
yeah, for
immediately.
sure. That's unlike Don Newman's number 1-800-Jersey-7. We would have to come up with our own appropriate 800
Yes,
number for that. Maybe 1-800-cranberries now. Who knows?
I like it. I like it. And I do want to highlight that though these resources are applicable to both product and service-based businesses, our office works directly with companies on their specific business scenarios. So Bill and I are constantly engaging with U.S. Or New Jersey based manufacturers, service providers, so that we can help them find the best solutions for them. And to zoom out a little bit, the Business Action Center is here to support all of the businesses throughout the state in any business related issue that they have. So we are your resource for exports. We're your resource for expanding your local footprint, and your one-stop business resource. So I thank you all for your time today, and we're going to stop the recording. Um, and thank you again to our valuable partners, specifically the Point Pleasant Chamber of Commerce, the Brick Township Chamber, Southern Ocean Chamber